On happy Monday evening, everyone. Welcome to Monday Night Must See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares. I'm your host, Pete Pardo, Sea of Tranquility. We've got an even bigger house this week. We've got brand new to the show. We've got Sydney Taylor all the way down at the bottom of the squares. Right next to her, we've got Lynne Versaci. We've got Steve Keeler. In the center square tonight is Mr. Chris Allo. We've got Ryan Skow, Butch Jones, Nick Franco, and myself. One of these days, I'm going to forget someone's name just because I'm old, and that's going to happen. So we got so many people here. Anyway, so welcome, everybody. We've got a great show for you tonight. So I have tasked everybody. You know, we talk a lot about supergroups here on the channel. And what I've tasked everybody to do is put together 2 fantasy supergroups. One supergroup made up of musicians that are alive and playing. The other supergroup made up of those who are no longer with us. You can mix match any genre. You can have 2 guitar players, 1 guitar player, no guitar players, a trio, a 5-piece, a 6-piece, a horn section, keyboard player, 2 vocalists, whatever the hell you want. So it's gonna be ladies first. And tonight, Sydney, since you are brand new to the show, you're gonna kick us off with your first supergroup consisting of all living musicians.
All right, so this was harder for me than the dead musicians, to be honest. I feel like there are still so many options, and it was a little difficult. But first off, Alice Cooper is my all-time end-all be-all artist, so I had to put Alice as my lead vocalist. I mean, does it get any better than Alice Cooper, really, when it comes to theatrics and things like that? So Alice Cooper was my lead vocalist for my living supergroup. For guitar, I thought I'd put Slash as lead guitarist. He did a song with Alice, Vengeance is Mine, which was on 2008's Along Came a Spider. So I know that vocally and musically, they really work together. So I thought that I would go ahead and put Slash as lead guitar player. I didn't really feel that it was super necessary to have another guitar player. So I just kind of left it at Slash. For my bass player, I put Rudy Sarzo, who needs no introduction. I was really in between him and Jeff Pilson because I love Jeff. But I think I went with Rudy. He's worked with pretty much every band under the sun, so I know that he can do pretty much anything. He can do the heavy stuff, the lighter stuff, like he does with the Guess Who. So Rudy Sarzo is my bass player. And for drums, I was in between. This was the hardest one for me. I was in between kind of going with a classic sound with Tommy Aldridge, who also played with Rudy Sarzo in Ozzy's band. Tommy Aldridge also plays in Whitesnake now. He's just, I mean, what other drummer plays with his hands? It's insane. And then I was also thinking about maybe having Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters to kind of bring in a modern 70s twist to the band, but I was leaning more towards Tommy Aldridge. So I'd probably say that that's my 4-piece kind of classic living supergroup.
Nice.
Aldridge. That's great.
That is good. All right, Lynn, you're up next.
Love Tommy Aldridge. Okay, but can we mute Butch during this? All right, so my supergroup, and this is, listen, do they work well together? I have no idea if they'll work well together, but it's something that I want to see. So my drummer, of course, you guys all know that I have this crazy passion for drummers, right? So Rod Morgenstein is my drummer that I chose for this supergroup, right? Dixie Dregs, Winger, Steve Morse Band, and he's just a great drummer. He's a great musician, nice guy. He's actually a teacher at Berkeley in Boston, which is really cool. And, you know, I actually worked for him when he played at the Chance at Theater in Poughkeepsie, New York. And he's a great guy. He's constantly smiling when he's playing the drums, you know, and it's like he's 67 years old, but he still gets excited. Like he just got his first snare drum when he was 10, you know? So that's why I picked Rod. And again, to back up that rhythm section, I picked Billy Sheehan. Again, Billy Sheehan, he's pretty amazing, right? Tallis, Steve Vai, David Lee Roth, his finger picking, his bass slapping, or you know that movie Slapping the Bass. Like I think of Billy Sheehan when I think of that part of the movie. But Billy Sheehan and Rod Morgenstein, I feel like to me that would be a great rhythm section, right? And then for guitar, you know, if I go with 2, I'll tell you my second one. But Steve Vai was my guitar player for this super group. And actually, it's funny that I picked Steve Vai because 2 years ago today, I went to see Generation X in Albany, and Butch, I saw you there. Steve Vai actually gave me his guitar pick, and of course, I was fangirling out, you know, when he came out in the crowd and gave me his pick. But Steve Vai is my guitar player for that super group. If I had to pick a number 2, it would be Zach Wild.
Ooh, changed.
yeah, I love Zach, and I think stop it right now. and I think that together, I think that they would be awesome. But my singer for this super group is Rob Halford. So
Wow.
I
that coming.
well, you know what? And again, they work together. You know, I just kind of feel like they all have years of playing in the music business, and they're all seasoned musicians. So I feel like each of them together can do just about anything. So I would love to see that happen. If anybody out there can make it happen, that would be
Is Rod Morgenstein really 67 years old already?
He is. His birthday's actually 4 days and like 18 years before mine. It's crazy.
Been around a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, I
he's
didn't think he was
just amazing. He's amazing.
You figure the Dregs was like mid-70s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I was gonna wear my Dixie Dregs hat, but then it would mess up my girl hair. So, you know, for vanity, I didn't put the hat on.
Very cool. All right, Ryan Skow, you are up next.
All right, so I was all over the place with this, and I couldn't decide until I like picked a theme, because I'm like, what are you gonna have, like you know, Buddy Rich playing with Pete Steele, like but I kind of settled on like 80s thrash metal ish for the most part. So for the living band on vocals, one of my favorite vocalists ever is Kronos from Venom. A very distinct voice, you know, mostly on the old Venom stuff, but you know, it's kind of like an even more satanic version of Lemmy, even though the lyrics were kind of humorous at times. On drums, one of my favorite drummers ever is Away from Voivod. Very, you know, played very raw, visceral stuff early on, and then later they turned more like a prog metal band, and still was a phenomenal drummer. On bass player, from 10 Billion Bands, Sadist, Iced Earth, Death. You could probably fill in some of the other bands he played with. Steve DiGiorgio, amazing bass player. His bass playing on the old Sadist albums and on Death albums is just off the fucking charts. And for the guitar players, I actually had to dig up the vinyl because a little more obscure choices here. First one is Roone Erickson, aka Blasphemer, played in Mayhem from Norway for a couple of years, but his thrash band he played in for almost actually longer was Aura Noir. So I dug this one up. This is from 1995. Phenomenal guitarist. And then from Germany, you know what? I forgot his real name. I'm blanking out here, but his band name is Infernal, and he played in the German thrash band Disaster. And this was from 1998, Hellfire's Dominion. So I figured I'd bring these out because those bands are a little more obscure. But those guys, it's like old school, early Slayer, Dark Angel, Exodus, like that kind of thrash, like really visceral, intense thrash. So if that was a band, I would fucking love to hear it.
Mr. Ryan, can you put that album cover back up?
The last one?
Yeah. What's the name of the band?
Disaster.
Spelled wrong.
It's not spelled in English. It's Deaster.
If you say so.
I knew you were going to say something about that.
Ryan,
What's up?
Marcus Kuschke.
That's his real name?
Yeah, born 1973.
You Googled it. That doesn't.
Nice.
No, I get accolades for this. This is what we want.
So Sydney, just so you know, Nick is our actual research guru on the show. If there's any kind of question about anything while we're live, he goes and gets the answer.
Yeah, behind me is the laptop.
I'd help with that too, but guess what? I'm using my laptop to view this. I don't have one on the side to mess around with.
You're no help, Steve. You're no help at all.
Ryan Skow, I'm shocked that you picked something obscure. I was totally out of the ballpark.
I wanted to surprise you, Steve, by doing that. You didn't see that coming, I'm sure.
All right. The center square is next. Mr. Allo.
Woo! All right. I sort of like Lynn. I didn't give a fuck what anybody thinks. I was just picking a band that I wanted to hear. So I'm a huge Black Sabbath fan. So, and I wish there was a version of Black Sabbath out there that actually would play stuff from all the different versions of Black Sabbath, even though, you know, Black Sabbath's been going for a couple years now. So anyway, if I wanted somebody to sound like Black Sabbath, I was thinking I would get Tony Iommi on lead guitar. And I was thinking, I mean, he's my all-time favorite musician. I was like, who should I get on bass? And I was thinking, well, these guys might work well together. So I was like, all right, give me Geezer Butler on bass. Fuck it. I don't care what anybody thinks. On drums, I was like, he's a big Black Sabbath fan. I was like, best drummer in the world, Dave Lombardo. So I was putting him on drums and vocals. He's another big Black Sabbath fan. He covered NIB and Hand of Doom with his regular band. I really don't know how he would sound singing Sabbath stuff normally, but I don't give a fuck. So Glenn Danzig on vocals. So that's my new version of Black Sabbath. And I kind of was piecing together who would work like for the dead band and the live band. And I was like, yeah, first I did the live band. And then first I did the dead band, and then I did the live band, and I was like, yeah, these guys would work well together. I know from interviewing Glenn, he's a massive Sabbath fan and everything. And then I was like, oh, but the underwear incident. So real quick, as a kid, my dream was to see a concert at the Hammersmith Odeon in England. So in 1992, I flew to England to see Black Sabbath at the Hammersmith Odeon. I was doing college radio. I contacted IRS Records or whatever the fuck label it was. They put me through to Gloria Butler, and I didn't interview them at Hammersmith, but I went to some other city, and I interviewed Geezer and Vinny Appice. And after the interview, I wish I had this part on tape. I turned the tape recorder off, and they were like, "Oh, this isn't your first night seeing this tour, is it?" I'm like, "No, it's my fourth time seeing it so far." I'm like, "I went to Cleveland to see you guys." And they're like, "Well, what? You're from New York." I told them. They're like, "Why'd you go to Cleveland?" And I'm like, "Oh, because Sabbath was playing with Danzig." And I'm like, "I'm a huge Danzig fan." And Vinny and Geezer looked at each other and they were like, "Oh, that fucking guy." And I was like, "Oh, seriously?" And they were like, "Yeah." They were like, "We had all sorts of problems with him on the road." He was like, they were just apparently, again, this is all from them. So, I'm in the clear, Pete's in the clear. But they had said that they were like getting bothered by Glenn Danzig all the time. Then they said venues started bothering Sabbath management because they said that Danzig was drilling holes in the locker room to spy on the guys in Sabbath. And then again, this is all alleged stories. But then Geezer Butler goes, "Yeah," he goes, "the worst part was he asked me for me underwear."
Oh,
what?
my God, this is something.
And I'm like, again, I was totally floored hearing this. And the only thing I could say, I said it to Geezer and Vinny. I was like, maybe he wanted to sell them. And Vinny Appice looks at me and goes, "Sell them? I think he wanted to smell them." So I don't know. This was 30 years ago almost. Or maybe they could get that behind them and still get a band. But hey, if I'm picking, those are the guys I want. So that's my band.
Steve.
This is the weirdest Danzig story I ever heard. Now, we all know the one about the hardcore kid knocking Danzig out. That was just number one. That's going to be the number one.
No, this is the new number one.
And when I thought that you were going to talk about this, riff on the road, it's the usual thing. Like Glenn Benton got mad at Skinless because he drank it. He stole their bottle of Jaeger. Or Venom Inc. gave Goatwhore a big hard time on the road. And they would say, "We're going to Europe with them." We're like, "We changed our tour. We're not going."
Crazy. Butch.
Yeah, asked him for his underwear.
I think Chris just cemented himself as the permanent center square.
I'm just
Oh my God.
I hope that wasn't a bad story, Pete. Hope that was an okay story. But
I gotta say, I think that tops the Nightwish story where what's his face put ketchup all over his
ketchup. Yeah, that was
Alfredo.
good one too.
Yeah, that's oh my God.
That was a good one.
Why did he put ketchup on? I don't know the story.
Fettuccine Alfredo. It was the guitar player from Nightwish.
Yeah.
At least it's food and not his dick. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have made an interesting story too.
Nothing crazier than Danzig sneaking around and drilling holes in Black Sabbath.
Oh my God. There's Porky's here. Jesus. All right, Mr. Keeler, you're up.
Sorry, Pete.
I'm up. All right. So we're doing people that are alive first, right?
Yep.
Nice.
All right. So I asked Pete earlier today, 'cause I always think my brain always tries to take this into two categories. I want classic rock and I want metal. So I'm giving you both. Pete can ban me after this if he wants. So for my heavier project, I'm going with the same vocalist as someone else did earlier. And I don't care if these guys get along, whether it makes sense to anybody here. So I'm going to second Lynn and Chris on this. So my vocals is Rob Halford.
Yeah.
My guitarist is Tony Iommi.
Nice.
My bass player is Steve Harris. We want supergroups tonight, right? Don't we? We got Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and Black Sabbath.
Nice.
And I'm going on drums. You would think I'm going to go with someone like Stephen Pardo, which I did have written down. I'm going with Gene Hoglan from Testament and Death and all the other band, Dark Angel, to be our drummer. And I think we're going to make it just a little heavier than they've done their material. And for my regular metal rock and roll band, going to channel and Butch is going to love me. I think they're going to pick Jay from Rival Sons for the vocals.
Nice. Nice.
I'm going to pick a gentleman named Jimmy Page for guitar. And I'm going to put Geezer Butler on bass. So Geezer's not getting a weekend off either. So these guys are going to tour together too. So we're going to make this tour for the 2022. And I'm going to get Mickey D from the Scorpions.
Oh my God. Oh,
And Motorhead and King Diamond and wherever else Mickey was. So those are my two live bands. And I hope everyone thinks that.
Wow.
Check them out.
me at Mickey D.
Wow. I'm just trying to fathom.
What that? You'd go see it, right?
I would absolutely go see that.
Steve, you made Mickey D. He's fucking Motorhead. Come on, Steve.
Yeah.
That's a big. That was the biggest thing for me.
Wow.
I got one more note about that. Seeing Mickey D with the Scorpions a couple of years ago at the Garden made the Scorpions that much better. I was sitting on the side of the stage. It was them and Megadeth, and the tour was tragically canceled through it because Claus had voice problems, and Mustaine got sick, was in the hospital. But we saw that at the Garden, and I was just watching the side, and Mickey D. And I've seen the Scorpions lately a lot. Every year they come around for their final tour. I see them, but watching Mickey D just made him so much heavier. And he just put heaviness into those parts for sure.
Without a doubt.
Cool choices. All right, Mr. Franco, you're up.
All right. So I'm glad Keeler went ahead and said, screw it, I'm going to give you the hard rock and the heavy stuff at the same time.
Another
I'm
one.
not gonna do that totally, but so we'll start from the drum kit out. And I was torn between two individuals, Mickey D being one of them. I wanted to pick Mickey D because of everything he's done is just, the guy's one of the most exciting drummers I've ever seen. And I think he's, he can do anything. But the drummer that I was kind of leaning toward from my little more extreme world is a man named Kjetil Haraldstad. He's better known by his stage name of Frost. And he is a Norwegian drummer, and he is in Satyricon and 1349. And the man is like an absolute machine behind the kit. He's my favorite drummer to watch. And I think he's done enough in music that I think he could, he's good enough to do anything, like whether it's jazz or rock or heavy metal. So I think it would be interesting to see a guy with that sort of extremity mixing in with the next people I'm going to name. So on bass guitar, I absolutely have to pick Steve Harris because he is my favorite bass player, one of my favorite songwriters on earth. And, just to make a super group around him would be outstanding. As a very close second, I had Marcus Grosskopf from Halloween, the heartbeat of Halloween from the beginning. That man has written more Halloween songs. I love his tone. You could always hear the bass in Halloween, and I love that. But we'll go with Steve Harris. And on guitar, we're going to go with somebody Steve Harris knows very well. We're going to go with Adrian Smith. We have to. There's nobody I love more on guitar than Adrian Smith, and he has to be in my supergroup. But he's going to be joined by a slightly younger man named Asa Holopainen, who is the heartbeat and co-founding guitarist of Amorphous. More beautiful melodies and riffs. have come out of that man's two hands than anyone except Adrian Smith. So I'd like to see what what a more modern 90s band forward could do with a guy like Adrian Smith together, what kind of stuff they could come up with. And vocalist I struggled with. Obviously there's so many amazing vocalists out there, but I'm going to pick, in keeping with this, my favorite living vocalist right now. It's a toss up between Tommy from Amorphous, but I'm going to go with Alan Averill from Primordial, from Dread Sovereign. I don't think there's a more versatile extreme vocalist alive right now. His screams, his growls, he can do black metal. He can make your heart fall out of your fucking chest. I truly believe now his body of work behind him is so much more than just his main band. And I think you put that dude with anybody and he's going to just make your fucking hair stand up. So we'll go with him. And I went a little, I decided to do keyboardists because I love that. And I don't know, I'm torn, man. I'm torn between Steinar Janssen, known as Sverd from Arcturus. Look up his videos on YouTube, just SVERD, Sverd. If you like keys out there, watch this man's piano playing and what he's done for a very proggy black metal band called Arcturus. And I tied that with Lars Nedlund, who's from Solefald and Borknagar, another progressive genius with Hammond organ, piano, a great voice on him too, so he could sing accompaniment to Alan. So that would be my living super group right there.
That's a bunch of all-stars right there.
Good choices.
Where can we get tickets for that?
From yourfuckedits2020.com.
Okay, great. I'll look for that.
All right, Butch, you're
Here
up.
we go. Well, so the living band for me, I kind of took it and went like my three guys and then narrowed it down from the three to one. And actually, hearing you guys say some stuff, it made me change something. So I'm going to be the first guy to do something at the end here. But I'm starting with my drummers. And like Sydney said, and Lynn obviously knows because Lynn has known me for eons. The drummer that I was really leaning towards was Tommy Aldridge because he's my favorite living drummer. But Aldridge is godlike on the Pat Travers era, and Go For What You Know, and going into Speak of the Devil, which he's just insane on. And also in between those two, he played with Gary Moore, which he was completely insane on. But those, to me, as much as I love Aldridge studio-wise, he never sounds like Tommy Aldridge except for those records. Anything else that you hear, you almost don't know it's Tommy Aldridge until you look at the liner notes and see that it's Tommy Aldridge, which I never understood because he's one of the most individualistic drummers out there. But when you hear a lot of studio stuff, it doesn't sound like Tommy Aldridge. So for that reason, I didn't go with Tommy Aldridge. I went with a friend of mine who has been a guy that I have loved since 2000, and Lynn's laughing already, so she probably knows who I'm going to say. Drummer Will Hunt, who is the drummer now in Evanescence. He's also did a short tour with Static X, but he's from the band that I love and I will always talk about to the day I die. Their debut record is it might be my favorite debut record. Well, I guess Van Halen 1 is up there, but it's one of my favorite debut records of all time. He was in a band called Scrape. And that record, his drum tone on that record is godlike. He is a groove guy. He is very Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee is his hero. He's very theatrical when you watch him play, but he's got that he hits hard and he's got that groove to him. So Will Hunt is my drummer. So love you, Will. My singer, like Steve had said, his guy, I definitely was leaning towards Jay Buchanan from Rival Sons, because he is my favorite singer of the modern day singers, because he's a throwback to the 70s, and I love that. But he is so 70s that I don't know if he would work in my more hard rock thing than just being a rock band of the 70s. So I didn't pick Jay. I'm going to pick Glenn Hughes, because Glenn Hughes has been a huge guy to me forever. And he's a songwriter, so that's important. You got a great singer and he can write songs, so that's huge to me. My bass player, I've already heard two other guys say it, and anyone that knows me knows that Steve Harris is without a doubt my favorite bass player ever. So another songwriter. So he's different than what Hughes would write. He's got a more metal thing to him. He's got the Gallup thing. He's got all the stuff that he did with Maiden in the 80s. So that would be the interesting combination. And then we get to the good stuff. So here's the guitar player. So what I just thought of, I had two guys, but I've been listening to a lot of Leonard Skinner lately, Steve Gaines, and I've been listening to a bunch of 38 Special because of Jeff Carlisi. So I'm going to change this at the last minute here, and I'm going to add a third guy. So I'm going to have a 3 guitar player attack. So would you guys like to guess who my first guitar player is?
Butch with the Hail Mary.
Janet Gersh.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
my number one, my first guitar player in my band is John Sykes. Because
I give him
John
something
Sykes,
to do, right? Because
right?
No
Exactly.
way.
Get him out on the road and do something, god damn it. So John Sykes is my number one. That he means everything to me. The guy is he's the shit. He's the cool. Just watch if you guys don't know about John Sykes and how cool John Sykes was and is, just go back and watch any video from the Slighted End era and just like Love Ain't No Stranger. John Sykes is the coolest guy ever in that solo, just flipping his hair and just making faces in the video, the coolest ever. So John Sykes is my number one. My number 2 is Michael Schenker. So can you imagine having a band with John Sykes as one guitar player and Michael Schenker as the other guitar player? You've got two of the most melodic, heavy guitar players that riff up a storm. There would be no shortage of songs written with those two guys in a fucking band. So Sykes, Schenker. So who could I possibly be bringing in as my third guitar player of this band? John Norum. So you have Sykes, Schenker, and John Norum. Next.
Yeah.
Butch, you always mention Sykes, but I have yet to hear you mention this great band he played with.
Oh, Ryan, come on now. Come on now. I at least on Facebook, I give Spellbound. Oh,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
He's
I
nice.
fucking love it. I love this album.
I will tell you, in like 1984 or 85, a bunch of my friends, we skipped school and we went to White Plains. And I have no idea what the name of this place was, but it was an electronic store. Like before there was a Circuit City, this store existed in White Plains. I have no idea what the name of the store was. Up top was an electronic store, stereos, TVs, and everything. And down the bottom was nothing but records. And it had a big arrow pointing to go downstairs to the records. We walked down, and I knew about Tigers, but I had never heard it. And I'm down there, and I went to the tees because I was looking for. I'm like, let's you know, like back in the day, you go to a record store. Let's test this store and see how good they are. I got something that I'm looking for. Let's see if they have it. And I go down there, and I'm looking through the tees, and I found Spellbound, and I lost my shit. I'm yelling to it was like 5 of us. I'm yelling at the guys, and I pulled it up. Holy shit! I had no idea what it sounded like. All I knew is that John James Sykes was in that band. And I bought that record and went home and heard it. Blackjack to this day. Oh my God. Ryan.
Fucking great.
Oh,
I knew you loved him. You hadn't mentioned him on the show yet, so I wanted to drag him out.
That is true.
That's true.
Oof.
Nice.
Try getting Butch off a tour bus when he's on the tour bus with John Sykes for hours and hours.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that I'm going last here because 2 things. First of all, Chris Allo and I are always like telepathically hooked up, it seems, all the time. My first instinct was to pick a modern day version of Black Sabbath.
Wow.
And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I have a feeling Chris is going to do that. After him. So that was my first thing. Second, the first guy I wanted to pick for this supergroup was John Sykes. And I said, you know what? Butch is going to pick him. I said, I'm not going to go that route either. So I'm like, all right. So then I thought about, all right, so who's kind of like my favorite supergroup of today? And one of my favorite supergroups of today is Black Country Communion. One of the things I don't like about Black Country Communion is that they never tour and they're just not really a full-time band at all. So I said, you know what? I'm going to create a band very similar, made up of guys who, quite frankly, aren't doing enough of anything these days, that I think if they got together, they would really, really be cool. And it'd be kind of similar, I think, to what Black Country Communion are all about. So I'm going to start off on drums, Mr. Vinny Appice.
Oof.
On bass, John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. On Hammond organ, Rod Argent from Argent and the
Wow.
Zeppelin.
Wow.
On guitar, Robin Trower. And on vocals, none other than Mr. Paul Rogers.
Wow.
Wow.
Nice.
Good choice.
That's a good one.
That is good.
Because quite
That is
frankly,
good.
I think that like Trower and Rogers go together. I mean, because they can play all that Free and Bad Company stuff, because Trower can do anything Paul Kossoff and Mick Ralphs ever did and probably better. And I love those guys, but I'm just saying. And Rogers still sounds like he's 30 years old.
Oh, it sounds great.
Vinny
He's
can
another
hit
great
those
drummer.
drums really hard and heavy. John Paul Jones is amazing, and we miss him so much because he's just not really doing much of anything. And Rod Argent is an amazing Hammond organ player. I think those guys could create some seriously kick-ass bluesy heavy rock the way, you know, it was done in the 70s. And I personally would love to see it.
I'd buy a ticket for that for sure.
Oh, hell yeah. That'd be fucking awesome.
Rod Argent. Wow.
Well, I'm not going to get a ticket unless they do the hold your head up.
Well, that's the thing, because they could do all those old Zombie and Argent classics. They can play classic Trower and Bad Company and Free. They can do a couple Zeppelin tracks if they wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, Vinny's there, so let's throw in, you know, whatever, something from Sabbath or whatever.
Maybe we can get them to play Brian's Backyard Barbecue next
There you
summer.
go. We can line that up.
Let's do it.
All
We
the
can do
bands
that.
we're mentioning tonight, you're all invited to come to play somewhere in Orange County if we can find a venue, okay?
There you go.
If we could ever have live music back.
Yeah.
Go figure, right? All right, with that, we're going to switch gears now to our fantasy supergroup made up of those who are no longer with us. And we're back to Sydney to kick us off with this part.
All right. So, like I said, I definitely had an easier time with this one. For those who don't know, I'm only 21, so I miss a lot of the people I'm going to say, which really upsets me, which is probably why it made this so easy for me. So I'm going to start out with drums first. I'm going to have Cozy Powell on the drums. I mean, come on, like Black Sabbath, Rainbow. I mean, he's just amazing. There's really no explanation that needs to be said for him.
None.
And he can do everything. He can do heavy stuff, a little bit softer stuff. So, I mean, to me, he's the perfect choice. So for bass, I'm going to go with the one and only Lemmy. You know, he's got the chops on bass. He can do vocals. He can help with background vocals and everything like that. And I mean, it doesn't get more metal than Lemmy. And I sadly never got to see him. So that's something that was on my bucket list. I never got to do. On guitar, this was hard because I know Eddie Van Halen passed away recently, of course, and I was torn as to if I wanted to choose Eddie. But my heart is forever with Randy Rhoads. I would have loved to have seen more from him. I mean, aside from the stuff he did with Quiet Riot, did the first debut too with Ozzy, but he had so much left to give, and I always have wanted to hear what else he could have done. With the classical training, of course, he could do everything. But yeah, Randy was definitely my guitar player. And I was really torn because before I got on this, I was actually having a conversation with my dad about my picks. And he's like, I was going to do kind of a fuck it approach and go like, I'm going to do like, because I love David Bowie. And I was like, David Bowie he doesn't go with this, but I was going to do it anyway because he's such a special place in my heart. But it came to me that the perfect frontman for a band like this would have to be the one and only Ronnie James Dio. I mean, to have Dio, Randy Rhoads, Lemmy, and Cozy Powell, I mean, he's one of the metal gods. Can't get any better than that. So honorable mention goes out to David Bowie, of course. If I put together a soft rock group, he will be my lead vocalist, but I had to go with Dio on that one.
Awesome.
I paid to see that lineup.
Yeah, me too.
No, I gotta say, Sydney, for being 21 years old and having your lineup start with Cozy Powell,
Talking about him last week.
I love you.
I'm gonna say that you're gonna be Butch's favorite person to talk to on Monday nights from now on, because you nearly knocked Butch out of the chair if you'd seen him.
I saw that. There was some like
He
chair
got
action.
touched by Wayne Gretzky there for a minute.
Rosie's the man.
No question.
That was very good though, Cindy. Awesome.
Cool.
I did not see that coming.
All right, Lynn, what do you got? What do you got?
Oh man. So all right, my dead people, you know, again, they don't really,
Ouch.
my dead really mesh, but it's people I love and the people I want to see. But I'm going to start off, and Sydney nailed it. Ronnie James Dio. I mean, I was listening to Sabbath before, and I just, oh God, seriously, I just can't. It like brings me to tears hearing Ronnie's voice. It really does. Like just puts me in another place entirely. So my singer is Ronnie James Dio for sure. And just like Sydney again, it's so funny. Her and I are similar, and you know, it's I did pick King Edward as my guitar player, and I have Randy Rhoads as my second guitar player. So you know, again, Randy Rhoads, I remember doing a report in high school, and I got an A+ in English on Randy Rhoads, you know, who my hero was. And I was 18 years old, and it was the coolest thing I ever, you know, it was really awesome. But so Randy Rhoads, King Edward, of course, you know, with the finger tapping and all that stuff. So, and they're just amazing. So Ronnie James Dio, King Edward, Randy Rhoads. My drummer is John Bonham. And I love John Bonham. Who doesn't love John Bonham? He's got big cymbals, the big kit, the big drumsticks, you know, he's got the double pedal sound right from one foot. I mean, it's, you know, he's amazing. So that's my band, except for the bass player is kind of an outcast, right? The jazz bass player. Again, I could go with Cliff Burton, and Cliff Burton would be cool, and he would probably fit a little bit better in this category because I love him, and he's a great bass player as well, you know. And Cliff Burton wasn't just metal. He did, I don't know if people know this, but he did classical, blues. He did it all. He studied it all. But a bass player that I love from back in the day, who played with Pat Metheny, was Jaco Pastors. So I was kind of torn between bass players there. So that's my passed up super group.
Jocko could shred, so if you're going to have lots of shredding between those two guitar players, why not put someone like him in the middle of it?
Yeah, he was the one who, the fretless bass, you know, without him, Tony Franklin wouldn't be doing anything either. So yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do have runners ups, right? Like I have Ray Gillen from Badlands because I love him, and I have Gary Moore, and I have, of course, Neil Peart, you know, but again, that was my group. And
damn, I didn't think about Ray Gillen. That's another one that'd probably be right up there for me.
Love him. I love him.
How could he not be?
Yeah. And it's funny because my living group, I had like runners up because I knew Butch was going to pick them. I had down Michael Schenker, Glenn Hughes, Steve Harris, but my drummer was Achilles Priester, you know.
That's awesome.
But I didn't pick those because I knew I didn't want to take Butchie's people.
Take my people. You can't take my people.
All right, Mr. Skow, what do you got?
All right, so it's actually it's funny when you guys are talking about this. You mentioned who would be good songwriters. I didn't even think of that until like now. So with that in mind, I kind of thought more of like a thrash thing too. So this band, if they just played songs from their main acts, I would see every date of the tour. I'd follow them around the world. So on drums, this is more of like an early 80s thrash heavy metal thing. Early 80s, obviously, Motorhead, Phil Filthy Taylor. You know, No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
Nice.
The guy's drumming on Overkill. It's like a howitzer battery. It's insane. So, you know, I know his drumming wasn't as great later on as it started with Motorhead, but early Motorhead, he's fucking amazing. Bass player, kind of waffled on this. And just before we started the show, it just came to me, and I'm going to go with from Celtic Frost, Martin E. Ain.
Good choice.
Amazing bass player, anchored that early Celtic Frost stuff in this monolithic, like, you know, like it's like black lava, just like sucking you into the earth. It was so fucking heavy, especially on the last Celtic Frost style, Monotheist. It was like, you know, a black hole of heaviness, just how fucking great he sounded. On vocals, going with the 80s thrash singer Paul Bailoff, who is my favorite Exodus vocalist on my favorite Exodus album, Bonded by Blood. Not the most technically proficient vocalist when it comes to like hitting high notes, but the guy was all about personality and intensity. And even though I'm a little too young to have seen Exodus back then with Bailoff, because he only was with them for a couple years early on, I'm sure he was a force to be reckoned with live, or so the rumors go. And on guitars, my two favorite thrash guitarists ever, also both great songwriters. Jeff Hanneman from Slayer, amazing guitarist. And the second one is actually my favorite guitarist of all time. Unfortunately, sadly deceased for a couple years now. Dennis D'Amore from Voivod, also known as Piggy. So if you had Hanneman and Piggy together, because their guitar styles, you know, with Slayer, obviously, they were always a two-guitar band. So you had Hanneman and Kerry King. And those guys kind of meshed together, you know, classically. You know, an early Slayer is infamous for, you know, especially Hanneman's riffs. But Voivod was only ever Piggy. They were only ever a one-guitar band. And his style is so alien and weird. I would love to hear like how him and Jeff would have sounded together. I think it would have been pretty cool if you could get those two guys in the same room to come up with songs, because they were like some of the heaviest shit on the earth, like back in the early days, you know, before the bands kind of divulged a bit. But they were in that mentality like 84, 85, 86, like with Slayer, with Voivod were writing back then. I would fucking love to hear that. So that is my Dead Guy band.
That's a really interesting combination, and I think Piggy and Jeff would work really interesting together because they're both have really weird styles, right? It'd be kind of interesting to see those mesh together.
Mhm.
Pretty cool. All right, Chris Allo.
All right. I used to go to a lot of concerts before the world fell apart. So when I was looking at the Dead band, I was like, all right, I want guys that have kind of, some of them have connections with one another, and ultimately I wanted like a really good set list. And lately I've been listening, of course, always listening to a lot of Black Sabbath, and I've been listening to a lot of Rainbow and Old Whitesnake at the same time. So on bass, I was starting with Jimmy Bain, who was also in Dio, but he was on the Rainbow Rising record with, it's been mentioned several times already, Cozy Powell on drums. That would be my drummer. Also mentioned several times tonight already, Randy Rhoads on guitar. I'm doing a keyboard player because I'm doing Rainbow and Whitesnake tunes. So of course I'm bringing in John Lord on keyboards. You know, I wanted another guitar player, and you know, the perfect thing would be just to kill John Sykes so I could have him in my Dead band. I mean, he's not fucking doing anything anyway. I mean, Butch is the only guy that's gonna miss him, but we won't. We'll leave him alive. So Mel Galley's gone, so we'll bring him in, and the ladies mentioned him on vocals, Ray Gillen from Badlands and Black Sabbath. You know, I was thinking, all right, you know, Jimmy Bain and Cozy were in Rainbow. Cozy, Mel Galley, and John Lord are on my favorite Whitesnake record, Slide It In. Of course, Ray and Cozy were in Sabbath at different times. The two of them and Randy Rhoads used to play Sabbath every night for fucking years. So the set list could be Sabbath, Whitesnake, Rainbow, Trapeze, Ozzy, and Badlands. I'm like, wow, that's pretty fucking good. And if we were going to write any new material, I'm like, holy shit, to get John Lord and Randy Rhoads together with all their classical composition shit, I was like, that'd be pretty good. So
I'd pay to see that.
that's my Dead band.
I love that.
2 thumbs up there. I like it.
Wait
Yeah, that's a good one.
a minute. Did Chris say something about killing John Sykes?
Just to get him in the band. Just to get him in the band, that's all. But he's not doing anything anyway.
Yeah,
At least this, I can get him in the band.
yeah, Chris, you kind of threw that out that he hasn't done anything anyhow. Then Butch pulled out a picture of him from his last known sighting. What was that, 1983 in his Kerrang?
It is 1983.
It's
It is
correct.
1983, correct.
Yeah.
But it's
I have
signed.
that copy.
Paging John Sykes. Does anybody know where John Sykes is?
Yeah, he's on the tour bus with Butch.
No.
Yeah, he's
Stall.
being chased down right by, what's it, Bad Robot Records is fucking chasing him down to get that advance back?
I don't know if I can recover from if we just killed John Sykes.
You seen Dan
Sykesy, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Just saying.
on this
You gotta give him
episode?
good, man.
Ouch.
That's great.
On this episode of the Hudson Valley Squares, we get to see Glenn Danzig peek through holes in the dressing room at Black Sabbath, and John Sykes be shot dead by Chris Allo. Stay tuned.
Oh,
Pete, back me up. He'd be good in that band.
He
I
would be
totally
good.
agree with
he'd
you.
be good in that band.
I totally agree with you.
He's alive.
But he's alive.
At least we hope he's alive. Jeez, I don't know.
But he's dead inside.
Allegedly alive.
Oh,
Hey,
man.
hey,
Oh, wow. It's getting out of control now.
wow.
All right, Steve Keeler, you're up.
All
David
right, I'm
Steve.
on the hot seat now. I went a whole bunch of different ways. Like today, like who do I pick for guitarists? And of course, Eddie Van Halen just passing. Should everybody should be mentioned tonight. Randy Rhoads has been mentioned. Stevie Ray Vaughan hasn't been mentioned. Johnny Winter, Dimebag from Pantera hasn't been mentioned yet. I just figured we'd mention those names because Pete, I'll look at the couple days later in the comments, say you didn't mention so and so.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I guess I'll have it away. And now vocalists too.
Like there's 8 of you, and not one of you mentioned Dimebag. What is going on here, right?
I love Dime time.
And then, of course, I went one way. I was doing more of a jam band thing. I had Morrison on vocals as one of my favorite vocalists, and Doors are one of my favorites. And I got to mention Chris Cornell, and I got to mention Elvis Presley because he's a king of rock and roll.
Yeah.
But this is my band. On keyboards, Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Nice.
On the drums, we're gonna have Neil Peart from Rush. On guitar, we're gonna have Jimi Hendrix.
Oh.
I mean,
He's on my
Jimmy doesn't
Going
really fit in with
virtuoso
the
here.
first two.
I like it.
And the bass player is gonna be Chris Squire.
Oh,
But Jimmy's going Prague. Jimmy's going Prague up in heaven. He's going now. He's getting a little Prague on.
He can do it. He can do it.
My vocalist is none other than Freddie Mercury.
Oh.
That's a
Wow.
pretty cool lineup, Steve. Where can I see
I
that?
mean, early Queen, some stuff that could roll with Yes and stuff like that. Those couple, that first album, and some of those long tails. And I think it would be an interesting group. Maybe you switch out Hendrix with somebody else from the list that's more proggy or whatever.
Jimmy can do it all.
He could do it
Jimmy
all.
can do any of that stuff.
So
I
that's
like that
my
lineup.
list, and I guess I didn't. Oh, and on drums, I mean, I could have if I went with the Morrison on vocals, I probably went with Keith Moon or John Bonham or maybe even Ginger Baker.
No, you said Peart.
Yeah.
Well,
Man.
apart from the main group, but if I would have went with Morrison on vocals instead of the Freddie Mercury led band, I was going more of like a jam bandy kind of thing, and I was gonna more like.
Can you imagine Neil Peart and Chris Squire?
Yeah, he's in the same. They're in the same band. They're playing the Chance. I think if they do. If they let
And
them
Emerson. You throw Emerson into that mix.
God
That's
damn.
crazy.
I'm gonna book the hologram tour of that.
Wow.
Just
Maybe we
instrumental.
can have hologram concerts because no one's really there.
Hologram audience too. There you go, Steve.
Yeah, you got a hologram audience too, and you're like in the hologram and you can see through it. That'll be the new technology.
Hologram beer.
You
Nice.
could just live stream it, you can just,
Yes.
nobody even has to be there. It can just be,
Yeah.
everybody's a hologram.
I got hologram coquito.
And now Nick Franco for people that I have never heard of before.
There will be some. I think you've heard of most of these guys. There might
Good.
be one
Okay.
who hasn't.
Good.
Yeah, I tried to be more, I could have picked, Lord Goatfucker, but I didn't. I stayed with
Don't say mean things about Lord Goatfucker.
No, my drummer, and this was a bit of a struggle to narrow it down. I was thinking about Clive Burr a lot, but I went with Ingo Schwichtenberg, who I brought up, I think last week I brought him up. He was the original drummer of Halloween. Poor guy, alcoholism, drugs, schizophrenia, guy killed himself at 29. And, I knew he was great because I loved the early Halloween stuff that he was a part of. He was such a good drummer. And I did a deep dive on him and looked at some, there's a lot of nice video footage of him doing solos and things. This kid was fucking brilliant. And I'm telling you, if this poor kid's life was not cut short by mental illness and suicide, I think we'd be talking about him in reverential tones today. I think he just, and man, what a shame.
Butch has a question. What's up, Butch?
I have a question, absolutely, because you've mentioned him before to me.
Yeah.
What was how long was he in Halloween?
So he was in Halloween from their inception till 1993. He performed on Chameleon, which was you know, a maligned album, and he was already depressed, and they threw him out after that because he just couldn't function. But he
Okay.
played on all your, you know, the Halloween EP,
And
Walls
the
of
Keepers.
Jericho, and both Keepers. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw them. I saw them then. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I wish I had. Never did.
Yeah, me
So
too.
yeah, he just started to fall apart. But you know, he was on all the classic Halloween stuff, and what a pace! What a, you know, you listen to How Many Tears, like some of those old songs. His fucking just playing is just unreal. So that would be my drummer of Postmortem. And then on bass, he's been mentioned, but it's got to be Lemmy. It's got to be the Rickenbacker. You know, it's got to be him. I was thinking about Cliff Burton, of course, because for me personally, those first few Metallica albums are just, you know, but Lemmy, man, it's got to be Lemmy. He's the coolest ever. And for guitars, you know, I had a few going on, but I settled on, I would want to hear what Fast Eddie Clarke could do with guys today. You know, like his Motorhead contributions, forget it. I mean, those are my forget it. So I think Fast Eddie would be, I'd love to see what you know he could do in the afterlife here. And so for the other guitarist, this also covers keyboards. This is where I'll say something that nobody fucking knows, but a kid named Terjat Bakken, his stage name was Valfar, and he's from the Sogndal region of Norway. And this kid died of, like, he was walking in the snow in the woods and didn't make it to his parents' cabin. Like, it's the most Norwegian, most black metal way to die, but he was very young. And his abilities on keyboards, guitar, I mean, he multi-instrumentalist, and Windear is not your, you know, when you think of black metal, especially if you're not too familiar with the genre, it's not burning churches down craziness, which I love, but this guy was a fucking virtuoso, trust me. His keyboard lines and melodies and the guitar tones in these songs were just so extreme but accessible at the same time. And he's not very well known outside of the underground, and he died I think he was still in his 20s. And what a talent. I would love to see what he could do with some classic guys. You know, he had the neoclassical training and shit. The guy was fucking amazing. And then on vocals, I mean, listen, if you ask me who the greatest dead singer is, it's Dio. He's the greatest of the deceased singers. That probably has to go without saying. But for me, just to be, like, for my own personal world, Pete Steele affected me more. And I fucking love Pete Steele's vocals. He's another one that could do it all. He could scream and yell and sound fucking awesome, and he could, you know, croon the pants off anybody. So, you know, I would love to see.
Very true.
Literally, yeah. I would love to see what imagine. I mean, it would probably be a lot of fighting and drinking and cocaine, but I would love to see what Lemmy and Pete Steele could come up with in the same room.
Wow.
You know, so that would be my fucking dead super group.
You know,
Ryan.
old Motorhead with Filthy, Fast Eddie, and Lemmy, they were famous for beating the shit out of each other, and their music was fucking great. So fighting each other, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But Pete Steele would win because he's so goddamn big, maybe.
Yeah.
He is
Yes,
a big
he
guy.
is.
I gotta say, I will actually say this. I'm not a big Typo fan.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, I became really good buddies with Johnny Kelly, who's still like a brother to me.
Nice.
And I got to meet and hang out with Pete a lot.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a fan, but I was friends. So, you know, I played the role. But hanging out with Pete was the persona that he showed to everybody on stage was the complete opposite of how he was. Nick, I remember being at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, New York, everybody. And being with Pete on the tour bus and drinking, as he did, drinking bottle of wine out of the bottle, because there was no glasses, he just drank it out of the bottle. And he would walk on the bus and be telling jokes.
Yeah.
And he would tell these jokes, and you're like, are you fucking kidding me? This is the same guy that was on stage with the candelabras and the whole doom and gloom and everything. He was one of the funniest guys I've ever met. I really enjoyed my time hanging out with him. He was a great guy.
Cool. That's so cool. What a great
not to interrupt, but Pete Steele was very funny on stage. He was one of the first frontmen in metal that I saw that would crack jokes. I mean, he had a dry sense of humor, but he was very funny.
Well, wasn't that a little later though? Wasn't in the beginning though, was it?
No, I mean, even when I saw him in Carnivore in '87, he was cracking jokes.
Okay.
You know, like he throw condoms out. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I personally infected all of them with AIDS infected needles. You know, just crazy, you know, shit. But he was funny. Even back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me he was always funny. You know, a dry sense of humor, but one of those metal guys. And that later, a lot of guys like Michael from Opeth and lots of other people were, you know, more comical.
Right.
But I always thought Pete was a riot on stage.
Steve Keeler has a comment.
Yeah, well, you just answered it, kind of, Chris. You mentioned Michael from Opeth because both of them kind of had that.
Yeah.
They remind me of how they both did it on stage. Like Michael will just be in the middle of this, you know, epic long Opeth song, and he'll stop and say some like stupid joke. And
Totally.
And people don't even really laugh. He just kind of looks like, oh, but
yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Jonathan, I just have to say, can we go back to the Pete Steele thing? Because I may or may not have a signed copy of the Playgirl magazine from the Chance Theater in Poughkeepsie when he was hanging out.
Nice.
I'm just saying.
You may or may not.
I may or may not have a copy of it.
All right, Butch, what's your final pick here?
Gee, me?
We already know.
Hi, Sydney. So Sydney and I are cozy family now. As anybody that has known me for any length of time knows that Cozy Powell is my favorite drummer of all fucking time.
Yeah.
Cozy Powell was the coolest drummer ever, having the bracelets, the metal stud bracelet before anyone was wearing that in like 76. He hit hard. He was cool when he hit. And just Rainbow Rising. Do I have to say anything else other than Rainbow Rising? No, I do not.
Sure.
Fucking Cozy Powell's my fucking drummer. There was, as Lynn knows, there was no debate and thought of anybody else other than Cozy as being my fucking favorite drummer.
For sure.
That's it. I'll go to singers next. Dio, obviously, but I didn't pick Dio.
Oh,
because Dio is my favorite metal singer, but there's only one guy that I absolutely call my favorite singer of all time, and I know Pete knows who that is. But my favorite singer of all time is Steve Marriott from Humble Pie. Steve Marriott, he could have easily been a metal singer because he had the attitude and created everything from the late 60s going into the 70s with Humble Pie. Steve Marriott was about attitude and having a good time. There's if you guys don't know Humble Pie, meaning the listeners or viewers, excuse me, Steve Marriott is the only singer I've ever seen that would talk to the audience and rap with the audience, but he sang it. He didn't talk to you. He sang whatever he was saying to the audience. And no one else has ever done that. It's like, if you go back and listen to any Humble Pie live record, that's amazing. Just listen to him just scat and talk but he's singing everything as he's talking to people. That is such a badass thing to do. Because
all right. How's everybody doing in the back of the house? Right? Absolutely. Because Marriott knew he was fucking cool. And that's the thing. He knew he was a fucking badass. He was doing whatever he wanted to do in a blues rock context in 1971 with Peter Frampton being in his band.
He could.
And it hadn't been done before. Marriott was just a badass. And anyone that doesn't know Steve Marriott, please do me a personal favor and go back and listen to, you know what? I'll even give you your homework assignment. Go and listen to Humble Pie, the King Biscuit Flower Hour live album. Not the Rockin' in the Fillmore. Everyone knows that album. That's not the one. It is the King Biscuit Flower Hour. Oh my God. That's genius. And I love Paul Rogers. Paul Rogers used to be my guy, but they were all emulating. You ask Paul Rogers, Robert Plant, Rod Stewart. You ask any of those guys who they were emulating, it was Steve Marriott. So Marriott. My guitar players was very simple, very easy. It took less than a nanosecond to figure out who my two guitar players were. So obviously, Edward. I don't have to say anything else. So that's just it. It's Edward. And with Edward, and I, when I was writing this down, I could hear this and vision this in my head, and it was so clear with having King Edward and Gary Moore. Can you imagine the songwriting between Edward Van Halen and Gary Moore? No, hold on. Not Gary Moore, the blues guy, who I love, but we're talking Gary Moore from the Skid Row stuff from the 60s, the late 60s going into the 70s, through the Thin Lizzy stuff, through to the mid 80s solo shit. That Gary Moore, which was just blazing, singing, wrote great songs. You take that Gary Moore with Edward Van Halen up to 81, Fair Warning, period. Edward, Gary, unfucking believable. So now you're wondering who my bass player could possibly be. Do you guys have an idea who my bass player could possibly be?
No.
Patrick Short?
So my bass player obviously is Phil Lynott. Now, here's the reason why.
Grab the picture.
Huh?
Grab your picture.
Oh,
Your like
Sykes and Phil. You're right. I didn't even think about that. Philo. And it's not because Phil Lynott was not the greatest bass player of all time. He was a great bass player. He wrote phenomenal songs. And that's why I picked Phil Lynott as my bass player, because he wrote phenomenal songs. You take Phil Lynott as, and it's not Lynott. Anyone that's watching this fucking video, it is not Lynott. It is Lynott. I met his mother. She said Lynott. It is Phil Lynott.
It's only the Irish people who constantly argue that point.
And you know what? And there's a video out of the last couple of months with Phil Lynott's daughter, Sarah, and oh my God. Really? Oh my God. I can't. Oh my God. You're going to have to edit this because I just totally forgot the other daughter's name. Oh my God.
Searching it. Don't worry.
Search it.
I'm trying.
Here's a picture of me with the statue in Dublin.
Oh, you suck, you motherfucker. I haven't been there yet.
Oh, you haven't? You have to have a drink at the bar too. You go.
Not Caroline was his wife's name. Sarah, and then he wrote another song for the other daughter. And
Kathleen.
Kathleen, right? Is it Kathleen?
Kathleen.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Nick.
They both had, there's a video with them on an Irish TV show, and the guy asked them, can you just completely let everyone know, is it Lynott or is it Lynott? And they said Lynott. So it's Lynott.
I can't tell you how many times folks from Ireland, after they hear me say Lynott, they're like, no, it's Lynott, it's Lynott. I'm like, well, that's not what anybody in the band calls him. That's not what his family calls him. So
Exactly. When Philomena Lynott tells me it's Lynott,
that's what it is.
Lynott.
Yeah.
Mom says it, done. But that would be an amazing band, having Phil, having Steve Marriott writing songs, having Edward there, having Gary Moore in that band. There would be some amazing songs. Forget the amazing playing, but there would be amazing songs.
Cool.
My God, I would love to hear that.
Awesome.
All right. So
this got a question.
I got one question. Actually, It's not a question. It's Lynott and Rock Fantasy, and I've had the record store for what, 35 years? I've always called him Phil Lynott here too. So
good man.
Good man, but
all right. So I decided to kind of put a weird lineup together here. It's kind of weird. It's kind of not. I got lots of members in this band, and you know what? I don't give a crap because it's my fantasy band. So
That's right.
vocals, I'm gonna start with. I'm gonna save the best for last. Well, not the best, but the biggest surprise for last. So on vocals, Mr. David Byron from Uriah Heep.
Oh, nice.
Much
I
missed.
didn't even think of that.
On keyboards, John Lord.
Ooh,
On bass, Felix Pappalardi from Mountain.
Jesus Christ! Wow.
Oh, that's good.
And actually, I'm going to save my drummer for last because the drummer's the only guy who could keep this bunch of musicians and the mayhem they're going to create in kind of in check. I don't have one guitar player. I don't have two guitar players. I have three of them. Tommy Bolin, Dwayne Allman,
Ooh.
and Gary Moore.
Nice.
Triple guitar attack. And the only guy that's going to keep up with those three guys is Keith Moon from The Who.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pete, that is definitely the hardest partying band anybody picked.
That's a lot of
Forget
cocaine.
the music. I just want to party with those guys.
They wouldn't last a month together, man. They'd kill each other, right? It's
Well, good thing they're already dead because nobody else they can't overdose again. So,
Oh God.
but that would be a party band for sure.
I'm just, what I was thinking is like, okay, well, I love Thin Lizzy so much, and I love bands like Skinner who have, all these guitar players. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a 3-guitar army band here. And I almost said, fuck it, and just threw Rory Gallagher into the mix too, but that would be kind of overkill. But I figure, man, Gary Moore, Dwayne Allman, and Tommy Bolin together,
Ooh.
that's some serious stuff going on right there. And then, you got Keith Moon, but yeah, you're right, Chris. That's a big drinking and drugging crew right there.
Fuck, yeah. Fucked up with those guys.
Yeah.
My band.
You know what? I got to say, I'm really surprised that you didn't pick Rory over Gary.
Yeah, he was a last minute guy. I had to pick him. I was like, he's my man. I had to pick him. So maybe stylistically wise, Rory might have fit a little better in that crew, but I would have loved to. I would just love to hear Gary and Tommy next to each other, and you throw Dwayne in there. It's just like, probably the only straight guy in this whole band would be John Lord, right? The rest of them,
Right, yeah.
He'd be the glue.
My band would kick your band's ass. Just
Oh,
saying.
you're probably right.
Nick, your band would kill our bands.
You got a schizophrenic drummer. You got Fats Eddie, Pete Steele, and Lemmy. Forget it.
A partying band too, except for that.
Well, this was a lot of fun. So now that you've heard all of our picks, everybody watching, we'd invite everybody to pick your favorite fantasy supergroup from musicians that are alive, as well as musicians that are no longer with us. It'll be interesting to see some of the combinations. And, before everybody starts screaming that, I can't believe you didn't mention this person, that person, and that person, you can't.
Rod Price.
Can't pick. What was that?
Rod Price.
Yeah, Rod
Lonesome
Price.
Dave.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Can't pick
Already
everybody.
got one out too.
But I think we got some really good combinations here, and I want to thank everybody's contributions today. So thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Lynn, Ryan, Chris, Steve, Nick, Butch, and I am Pete Pardo. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube.
All the damn time.
There you go. Everybody's got to get with it for next week's show, right? Tune in next Monday. We've got another great topic coming up with the crew here. So good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.